Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Why Business Analysts Wear Capes Part 2, The Unsung Heroes. I'm your moderator, Mariah Weiss, and I work as part of the marketing team here at IIBA. IIBA is an independent, not-for-profit professional association serving the global business analysis community. A recognized thought leader, IIBA is dedicated to elevating the discipline of business analysis. We provide our global community with relevant tools, resources, and networking opportunities to help you take control of your career. To say goodbye to 2020, we are currently offering a 20% rebate off of all of our exams. No special codes are required. Simply write the exam between November 1st to December 31st, 2020, and the 20% rebate will be applied. Give yourself the gift of learning this holiday season. You can find out more at iiba.org/certifications. I'm here with our panelists today, Kevin Crampton and Dane Benjamin. Kevin is a lead business analyst with the World Health Organization in Geneva. His current position primarily concerns supporting project delivery for emergency response. Dane is a senior business analyst with the Greater Toronto Airports Authority. With over 15 years in the field of business analysis, Dane has worked on medium and large-scale projects with organizations such as Scotiabank and Canadian Tire. Today, Kevin and Dane will be speaking about their experiences, tools, techniques, and processes they use in managing projects post-COVID-19. We will also be reaching out to our audience for a few polls and open-ended questions, so don't miss out on sharing your thoughts during this presentation. I'll hand it off to Kevin first to speak to his role.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everybody. Thanks for joining us, and a big thanks to the IIBA for inviting us to this opportunity. So thanks for the introduction. As I've said, I'm a business analyst working in the IT department of the World Health Organization in Geneva. That's the headquarters building that you can see there on the screen. And as you may or may not know, World Health Organization, to give you a quick intro to the work that we do. You probably heard lots about us in the press this year, given the global pandemic that we're all currently experiencing. So WHO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. It was formed back in, I think it was 1948. And really its main role is what's called normative. It exists to bring our member states together. There's 194 of them, and come up with standards, agreements, alignment for the greater good of public health. Our mission is that everybody should be able to achieve the greatest level of health and happiness and well-being. So we work out of the Geneva headquarters, that's where I'm based, and through a network of 6 regional offices around the world, and I think it's 150 country offices. So it really has a sort of roots and offshoots and kind of penetration all over the planet. Now, in addition to that technical guidance, and something that's relevant for our sort of discussion today, and particularly to my work, is that we've always been involved, the WHO, in things like humanitarian crises and in looking after something called the International Health Regulations, which are a kind of body of rules about how countries cooperate when there's a public health crisis. But particularly since 2014, when the Ebola crisis hit in West Africa, WHO's had a much more hands-on role. We have a program, the WHO Health Emergencies Program, which is there to help coordinate the response to kind of a public health crisis. Because a pandemic knows no borders, we've seen that, it doesn't respect borders. So we really need an international convening mechanism to bring countries together to sort of work together for the good of all. We can jump on to the next slide, I'll talk a bit more about that. So I work in the IT department, and the place where I fit in and what I'll talk about a little bit today is really in this area of emergencies. I have the privilege to be dedicated pretty much full time to our emergencies program. And so that means that having cut my teeth on stuff like the eradication of polio and working on Ebola and Zika, I'm now firmly working on lots of projects involved with COVID. And I'd say that the role of business analysis has evolved a little bit at the WHO as our missions evolved. Before, because our departments are independently sort of funded one from the other, they could hire BAs for different project initiatives that they have. And that over time, we've realized we had to kind of centralize and organize that function a bit better to stand up something like a business relationship management function within the organization of BRM, and to kind of bring the BAs in a bit more centrally with a bit more kind of standards across the house as to how we attach them to project work and how that gets executed. It's an interesting place to do business analysis work. We'll probably touch on that in some of the Q&A, because you can't underestimate the importance of sort of good stakeholder analysis. That's one thing that's key, given that we work with such a diverse group of people. You can be landing on a project that involves maybe heads of states, Ministry of Health officials, all the way down to end beneficiaries who are, say, refugees living in a camp in Bangladesh. So it's an enormously varied role, and one that I enjoy a great deal as a result. Jump to the next slide. And as we go through this talk, one project that I'll pick out and probably use for as an example, because it's very topical to the kind of the COVID pandemic that we're all experiencing, is one of our projects is in the area of contact tracing. And that's something you might have seen in the newspapers, heard about on the radio and the TV a lot. But WHO is involved with a number of other partners on smartphone application and an allied bit of software, which helps us record and draw out the chains of transmission linked to an outbreak that has human-to-human transmission of a disease. And this was set up originally kind of for Ebola, but we designed it so it would be useful for any disease where there's human-to-human transmission. And it's currently rolled out in 60+ countries for COVID alone. And very simply, the idea is, if you look at that sort of tree on the left-hand side, you can imagine an outbreak as being a tree diagram like that. So Kevin at the top there, Kevin Funkmeister Crampton myself, is the first known case, patient 0 in an outbreak. I pass it on to my friend Claude, and I attend an IIBA presentation in Geneva, and that becomes a spreader event for other people. And traditionally, epidemiologists would draw this stuff out on paper, and they would really try to understand the dynamics of a disease spatially and temporally. So it was obviously a solution that was ripe for kind of digital treatment. And if you click to the next slide with the animation, the whole reason we're doing this work is to break these chains of transmission. So if you click forward, what we really want to do is we want to put a big red cross on one of these lines to say that we want to stop Fred becoming infected. We want to track this disease so that as soon as somebody shows symptoms, we isolate them and we stop them being a vector for onward transmission of a disease. Because obviously if we stop Fred becoming infected, then we click forward. That will obviously put a big red cross on the line for Sarah as well. And you can well imagine this thing grows exponentially. We've all seen that in the news, and as we study the data on sort of COVID numbers across the world, the sooner you can get in and the better tools you have to shut down transmission, the better shape that you're going to be. So that's a bit of a background, and I'll use that in some other examples later on. And hand over to Dane for his great work as well.
Okay, hi. So Dane Benjamin, that's great. Thanks, Kevin. So as the intro said, I work at the Greater Toronto Airports Authority, Pearson, as people may commonly know, largest airport in Canada, best airport in the world as far as I'm concerned. You know, so yeah, been there about going on about 5 years now. It is a great place to be. You know, I've worked in various areas through the airport. And to touch on a little bit what Kevin said, also an evolution of the BA practice as well. When I first started there, you know, we were very much, you know, you get a BA assigned, you work on a project, you sort of do requirements, and you move on. We've actually evolved a lot to not just sort of wait till a project's involved. We actually kind of help out a little bit, sort of defining scope, sort of making sure a project is actually implemented all the way through. And we're actually talking about now also sort of, and after the project's implemented, doing a little bit of post-analysis. Was, you know, not just from a project standpoint, but did the original objectives get met? You know, sort of keep an eye, a line of sight on that as we go through. So there's definitely an evolution in the practice and actually becoming more of a practice, so which is really good. So we're sort of getting our hands in different areas. We're seeing more of sort of a trusted business partner getting into that area, so it's really good. And again, we are also a housing IT department, but you know, we do a lot of work with the business teams as well. With the airport, it is a very, like a mini city, is very varied. I mean, you think of the airport, planes landing in and out, but there's a lot that goes behind that. You know, a lot of logistics, there's transportation, getting people to and from the airport. is a whole nother airport, like while people are there. So it's a pretty varied environment. So myself, while I've been there, I've worked on different projects, different areas. The first bullet says access management. That's basically controlling access for employees, contractors as it goes through, because some areas of the airport are secure, some are not. Some are just public, but those are things you have to control. People visiting us, coming to see us, we're different workers. All that has to be kind of keep tracked as people go through the different secure and non-secure areas. We've worked on areas. This is all post-COVID and actually during COVID as well. Passenger flow. Prior to COVID, we were hitting about 50 million passengers a year coming through the airport. That's a lot of people to sort of get in and out. And the focus was on getting that happen efficiently and effectively as we go through. So because we can't just keep expanding, the size is pretty finite. So you want to make sure that process is as smooth as possible. So we did a lot of projects on that. As I mentioned, getting to and from the airport, that's a whole exercise in itself. That's our ground transportation. Buses, cars, vehicle, people driving in. So that's a whole area of flow that we also have to factor in. We did a lot of work on that as well. And while you're at the airport, there's retail, right? That's another area. There's a different retail. I'm sure some of you have been to an airport. There's different retail areas. That's another thing to consider as well. I put on there FESTI. It's called the Fire Emergency Training School. We actually have, so at the airport, which is really fascinating, we not only have our own fire department, we have our own fire school, which is kind of well recognized. So that's another fascinating part of the airport as well. And then again, customer service. I also work on a couple of projects on customer service, more on the phone line area, but that sort of funnels into, because we do have people in terminals helping out passengers, things like that, but there's also calling the airport or looking up information to the airport. So there's also projects in that area as well. So I've kind of been around. It's been a real fast 5 years, but it's been a fun 5 years. So yeah, that's a little bit for me. So we can go on to the next one.
Thanks, Dane. It's amazing to see how business analysis is used to manage changes in different organizations across the world and has really evolved in 2020 in so many different ways. I will move us on to our first question for the audience. So we're trying something new today, so we'd love to get your feedback. After hearing from our panelists, we wanted to ask you, our audience, given the physical separation imposed on us during COVID-19, how have you adapted your business analysis techniques? Please use the link found in the chat, the link, or in the slides, or in the QR code with your phone to answer the open-ended question and upvote your favorite answers from other participants. It will ask you to accept the privacy rules, but please know that your answers are anonymous. Just follow the instructions to star existing answers, share your own thoughts on the exchange, and don't feel too rushed about this segment. Feel free to respond to this as you think of ideas through the presentation. We'll come back to it at the conclusion of our presentation as time permits. If you missed a QR code, don't worry. The link in the chat box will also send you to the participation link. So that moves us to the first question for Kevin here. My first question is, tell us about the one business analyst trait that you hold dear throughout your professional journey and how that has helped your projects, initiatives, and career.
Okay, yeah, no, good question. I guess one that I often don't see in business analysis literature, but encompasses a whole range of skills, which I think are core to the job that we do, is empathy, which is a word I particularly like, because very often on projects I've been on, you find yourself as almost a champion for the business, particularly when your role is to sort of translate define challenge requirements into a form that can be then acted upon for solution optioning or for setting up a project and moving forward to create some tools. So I think empathy, which comprises within it sort of good listening. My mum always used to say to me that the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should be using those in exactly that proportion. I'm sure you heard that one before. But she knew a thing or two, my mum, so it's good advice. And I'd say certainly from my experience, particularly at the WHO, I mean, I touched in the introduction on just how diverse the stakeholders are. And if you jump to the next slide, I think I might have some photos here as well. But when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that I've had the privilege over the last couple of years to travel to some of the countries where our teams are active and work alongside them for periods of time. And, you know, on the left there, you've got a classroom in Democratic Republic of Congo. And this was during the recent Ebola outbreak, the last couple of years. And one revelation there, working alongside the people there, was that Ebola wasn't actually at the top of their list of worries. There were so many other concerns in their day-to-day life due to the instability politically of that region, armed insurgents, other diseases, you know, it's a low resource setting, that you go there with the mindset that Ebola, you care about it enormously, it's your job, your project, but having the empathy to sit down, listen and appreciate where that sits in their list of priorities was key to coming up with solutions that were going to work in those communities. And similar on the right-hand side there, that's a refugee camp for the displaced Rohingya population that have moved out of Myanmar and are currently in Bangladesh, in the news recently. And you know, you can design IT solutions back in Geneva or in regional office in Copenhagen, but nothing like going to the field and sort of really testing them with the people that have to use them to understand their situation, listen, be empathetic to their problems. Are they going to be able to charge electronic devices? Are they going to get Wi-Fi coverage? Is the thing actually going to work, the touchscreen, when it's pouring with rain during the wet season and they're ankle deep in sort of mud? So yeah, if I had to come up with one catch-all nice word based on my mum's good advice, I think I'd go with empathy.
Thanks, Kevin. I feel like it's always good to listen to your mother, and it's remarkable how empathy really helps you succeed in business analysis by appreciating the solutions specific to your stakeholders.
I totally echo.
I'll direct my next question to Dane. You're in one of the most fascinating jobs right now during the pandemic. Can you speak to how you had to redesign the business process?
Sure, yeah. Total redesign. Yeah, a lot of, like I said, what had to change for us is not only the public facing things that you would think about as an airport, right? Getting through the airport, the new initiatives that had to be taken in, the health controls that had to happen. Also behind the scenes for us working. Right now, being at home, you're used to, again, I can actually go to a part of the airport for a project you're working on. You can see it, you can touch it, you can talk to other people. You can actually, you know, talk to the business stakeholder, but you can look for yourselves, look around what's happening, observe for yourself. That part has kind of put the kibosh on that for right now, because you can't really do that. Like for us to actually physically go to the airport now, we actually have to get permission, because in my role, I'm not necessarily need to be at the terminal. So then, you know, might as well stay out the way, leave it for the people who need to be there. But that is definitely something that had to be redesigned. Things like, just even from an administrative purposes, normally I think something mundane you might think about that some of you may have at a business, submitting your expenses, right? Usually that could be, you know, you get the receipts and you do your thing and you put it in an internal package. Well, there's no internal, you know, there's no internal package, so you have to think about how that gets done. A lot of the things that, oh, there we go, thank you. Yeah, training, for example, in-class training is a thing that we can't do anymore right now. You know, just, you know, get together in a room and go through some training, and even talk about the training before. You know, sharing of equipment. There are some places in the business that have to actually share equipment as they come through different shifts. That you have to rethink how you do that, because it's, you know, all the safety protocols have to be around that. Like I said, administrative process, something simple as getting a pen. You know, you can just walk to a room and get a pen and pad, simple things like that. Oh yeah, that's right. Can't really do that now. But the big part for us, project delivery, and then the way we do processes. Like I said, if you are assigned to a project that has to do a terminal, you know, simple as just going up and meeting with someone at the terminal, in their office, somewhere like that. That's gone away, so now it's phone and video, so you have to adjust the way you do things there. Even as we do things as BAs, one simple example is, for us, when we do our requirements documents, we usually get them signed off, which again is usually something I could walk up to someone's office, walk up to a desk, it's actually kind of nice because you actually have a nice conversation as part of it too. That you can't do that. So even thinking about getting a signature on a thing. So yes, there's electronic signatures, but that's a relatively new process for us. Thinking about, do you need a signature? Do you just need approval? So redesigning and thinking about how we do those things that we've kind of taken for granted, that we have to kind of change up. I think we've adapted really well, adopted some new tools, using things like Microsoft Teams, Office is really good. But again, this is new for everybody. I mean, everybody in this call has had to go through this, but those are kind of some things we have to change and adopt.
Thanks, Dane. I think that really leads well into our next question for Kevin. Although our audience is transitioning a lot of the time and they're finding something new here, some of us are really at a loss. What made you transition into the business analysis role, and how has that been for you?
Yeah, I think quite simply it was the bit of the job that I always enjoyed most in roles that I'd done before. Because as you say there, I came from a programming background, an IT geeky programmer, was then a sort of team lead and then become a project manager, fairly natural evolution in the kind of the IT area. And it was always the business analysis part that I enjoyed most in the project management work, because I enjoyed the people contact. I enjoyed the variety of it. I think we're all really privileged that we get to work across different domains, get inside other people's heads, learn about their problems, and try to help them find solutions to that. So it's a very rewarding thing to do. Yeah, I think so I crave variety. I think it was that drove me a little bit towards it. And what I've worked in the past across kind of TV, across different kind of IT, enterprise resource planning systems, ERP, and it was always coming back to enjoying sitting down with people, learning about their work, about their problems, and sort of developing out from there. So yeah, pretty natural transition for me, I think.
Thanks, Kevin. It is noteworthy how many business analysts have found this job after starting in something else and realizing they wanted something different. It feels related to how the whole workforce has upskilled or changed their roles during this pandemic. That does lead to my next question for Dane. Can you speak to how your role as a business analyst has changed from pre-COVID to COVID?
Sure. Okay, just before I jump in, I'm going to just piggyback on Kevin's comment about how he kind of felt her role. Similar thing, because until I realized what business analyst was, that's what I also found was kept drawing me. No matter what you're doing, it's that sitting down with somebody, learning about what they're doing, trying to help solve the problem. Because I was doing that before I even knew that business analysis was a thing. So similar to I can definitely echo what Kevin's saying.
Perhaps we're just very nosy people. Maybe that's what it is. We just like poking our noses in other people's business.
It could be that too. I have been told sometimes that it's a bit of that too. So it could be that as well. So yeah, so about how it changed pre-COVID to COVID. I guess there is no post-COVID right now. We're in COVID. One of the biggest change, could you just move to the next slide to say what I kind of jotted down, Maria? Thank you. Okay. So pre-COVID, again, still what I touched upon before, we were evolving the business analyst role from just simply, well, I'm just going to do requirements and that's it, to sort of managing that, to Kevin's point of being empathetic all the way through, sort of being a champion of the business and working with IT and vendors and other stakeholders to make sure your objectives got met. Like that still holds. Where I find right now the biggest change is really sort of helping people refocus on that, because with things change, the focus is on the immediate, right? Health, sort of survival mode of business is sort of, the immediate right now. What are we doing right now to kind of bridge us to whatever the post-COVID world is going to look like? So it's a lot of questions about, okay, your long-term goals, have they changed, or do we just need to shift right now because of where we are with COVID? So trying to help people sort of refocus on that. Yes, maybe it adds the timeline to your long-term, but did they really change? Because it may have. Maybe your long-term goals have changed, or maybe you have new short-term goals because of COVID. So let's try and distinguish these two so we don't lose sight of the long range. I find that's probably one of a bigger change. And then again, leading into that is where you're taking that business analyst to what I was trying to put a picture of sort of taking that higher level view. So again, you have your immediate project concern or immediate need, but then trying to keep an eye on that high level, like long-term goals. So looking at a business analyst from sort of a higher enterprise, now you have to kind of look at a worldwide level because of COVID. Again, your goals may have actually changed, or maybe they have to adjust on your methodology slightly to get to your long-term goal eventually. So it's a lot of helping focus on that. If there's one or two things I think have probably changed right now, it's that. I think the role of the business analyst is still fundamentally the same. It's just, again, we have to do it slightly differently. And again, that's made challenging because you don't have the face-to-face, right? So that's just an extra challenge as well.
Thanks, Dane. I feel like the word that kept popping up for you was focus. I mean, it's so easy in 2020 to get lost in all those details, to get lost in all these different threads of what's going on around you. And the word that you said multiple times was focus. We need to stay out of the weeds and understand what we're doing to move this forward.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because there's a lot happening right now. And I mean, health obviously is the number one focus. We are in a pandemic and that needs to be acknowledged. But we also need to also say, okay, eventually there'll be another side to this. So what, keep our long-term goals in mind. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Dane. I think that speaks really well to my question for Kevin. Over the years, have you seen a change in that perception of a business analysis role from organizations or C-suite executives?
Yeah, I think there has been an evolution, because I think traditionally maybe the business stakeholders themselves, we can tell you what we need. It's straightforward. Why do we need this kind of intermediary who's going to somehow capture and structure and maybe even challenge? We're just going to tell you, particularly in the IT phase. How often, as an IT business analyst, have you had somebody come to you and say, I just need a solution. I'll tell you what I want. You just give me the solution. You must have something to pull off the shelf. I've got a pretty good boss at the moment, and he's not as wise as my mum, but he's pretty wise. And one of his catchphrases is that it all starts with requirements. And to talk to Dane's point, particularly at the moment, I think when we don't have the face-to-face interaction as much, the value of that intermediary who's there to kind of accompany the business, work with them, structure requirements, add that value to a project and accompany it to its successful conclusion. I think it's just been proven more and more, particularly on projects where business analysis has perhaps been weakly done, projects with a big bang delivery towards the end, and the business realizes that merely stating their point of view and expecting a magic solution to pop out in 6 to 8 months' time isn't really an effective way to kind of get what you want, either cost-effective use of resources or effective in meeting the solution. And I think it's evolved to the point now where the discipline itself has kind of, sort of tightened up, and we have forums such as this and the existence of the IIBA. And one thing I'm keen to sort of champion going forward, particularly at WHO, because as you can imagine, a lot of our business analysis work happens under the framework of an emergency where people want it yesterday, where you want to get these products, these tools out of the door because they may have real life, saving effects on the beneficiaries you're trying to serve. So despite those enormous time pressures and often budget pressures as well, I think the C-level has begun to appreciate business analysis more and more as a reliable way to get a quality solution out of the end, to the point where one of the ideas I'm keen to push at WHO is the establishment of like a business analysis centre of excellence. We have a project management office, we have a project management centre of excellence, but I think up to now, to this point, business analysis was always seen as almost a subset of project management, rather than a respectable and fully robust, fully formed discipline in its own right. So that's an idea that I'm keen to pitch, and one that I think we might see evolving kind of more and more as the respect for and the understanding of the job that we do evolves.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that reminds me of a session we actually had about business analysts to the boardroom, and just that understanding that BAs understand that big bang and what's the solution a lot better, and can make sure that those projects don't just stay in this state where we can't understand how these requirements equal our solution. I'll move on to a slide for Dane. This question speaks less to the particular maturity of business analysis, but more so to the long-term effects that COVID-19 has had on the profession. Dane, from your observations, has COVID-19 changed the role of business analysis?
I wouldn't say not changed, but maybe accelerated. I think this was alluding to what Kevin's talking about, that evolution from business analyst being almost like a necessary evil, like from the point of, like you said, Kevin, people will tell you, I know what I want, just go get it, to no, you actually need to articulate your needs, to distinguishing a need from a want, to how does that fit to your longer term goals, to that sort of evolution. I think that's where it was going, slowly but surely. And Kevin sounds like we've all been to that same sort of struggle. If anything, I think it would accelerate that process to, okay, we really can help you articulate those needs, especially now with the chaos and trying to juggle the immediate of managing things for the now, which is a need, right? Things are changing daily, right? Daily, health regulations, all that, the cases, et cetera, it's changing daily. That's an immediate and necessary lead, Kevin, as you're saying, like from fighting that fire, to, okay, but eventually you were in business for a reason, right? So to manage that bridge. So kind of what I would say is accelerate that process of helping to define, resolve, anticipate those problems, especially anticipate, because what's the other side of this going to look like? A lot of things have changed. A lot of technologies have come into play. So I think our role is sort of, to be that trusted partner. That's why I like to say, like, we can be that trusted partner with the business and IT, and vendors, to be able to kind of help us along, because we are all here for, whatever that objective is. So I would say accelerate that process, maybe because everybody's sort of like, okay, I need help. We are here to help. we are here to help that. We can help sort of dive in and help resolve that immediate, but still tie you to the long term. So if there's anything, it's sort of accelerate that process and maybe help those conversations along. Whereas before, I think to Kevin's point, it is kind of seen as a struggle, and you kind of have to justify it, and you go through these conversations. Now in the immediate, I think we can immediately show the value there of helping along, helping resolve, helping people through this, and sort of take it along that level. So if there's anything, I think accelerate some of those processes.
Thanks, Dane. That actually moves us to a next poll really well. I mean, helping those conversations along have only become more challenging with how everything's changed as we're moving along, and untangling that web of issues as daily changes and challenges are moving us along. So I'm going to upload a poll for our audience here. I'm launching that now. What do you find is the most difficult part about remote work? I'll give everyone a few seconds to vote and then close this up. I see we have a good amount of participation already. I think we're seeing one that's coming out as the real winner here, but I mean, all of them have quite a few responses already. Give it a few more seconds. And closing. I'll just share the results with the audience right now. Okay, so I'm seeing 39% of the audience feels like collaboration is one of the toughest things to do with remote work. I think that makes a lot of sense with what we're seeing in the movement to remote work. I mean, you can't have those face-to-face conversations the same way. I'll just hide those results for now. Kevin and Dane, what are your thoughts on those results?
I would totally agree with that, especially here at the GTA. Actually, one of the things I actually love about this is hallway conversations. There's pluses and minuses to that, but you actually do get a lot. You have your formal meetings, which is one thing, but you do actually, a quick coffee, a hallway conversation can sort of go a long way to resolving issues and even just building relationships. right? Like, you know, it doesn't always have to be about, you know, the business at hand. You know, just that quick hallway conversation, chit chat, quick, you know, bump each other, you know, down for coffee and just talking. I think that's really the that remote. So collaboration, one thing you can, yes, there's tools, there's Teams, there's Office, there's stuff like that you can have, but that sort of, you know, I didn't quite understand that whole back and forth. Let's just have a quick chat thing. That's definitely, I would say, yeah, collaboration.
No, I
Yeah.
certainly agree with that. I'm just thinking, how many of those water cooler conversations did you actually pick up some tidbit about a project or some new connection or something that really then was useful in the job that you need to do? As you probably sense, I quite like talking a lot, despite my initial quote about 2 ears and 1 mouth. I do like talking. So one thing I've been trying to do is setting up like 15-minute virtual coffee calls with the people on my team that I don't actually work with on the projects, just to try and recreate some of that banter. And I say, it's not about work, 15 minutes, we'll have a coffee, we'll catch up, and we'll just share our thoughts. And it's no substitute for, you know, being next to your colleagues, but it's, yeah, better than being head down, purely having the work calls.
Totally agree. We recently trying that as well around here. So random, I think we call them random coffee chats, you know, just with somebody else, you get paired up, and it's definitely not about work, just chit chat. Because you're right, you can't run into people at the coffee station anymore. So, yeah.
I think that talks to our next question too. I mean, do you foresee that as the big curveball, or is there another big curveball in any kind of projects that you have, and how did you overcome those?
Kevin, you can go. I'll come up.
Sorry, Dane, go ahead.
Yeah, the curveball, if anything, the curveball was the lack of the face-to-face. That was the curveball, especially again, especially around here. Again, because the airport is so vast. That was actually one of the things I love about it. It doesn't feel like you're in an office. Like I could literally be talking to somebody in a terminal, or you know, in a baggage hall, or you know, stuff like that. So it doesn't feel like you're coming to an office building. Like it's so just that's half that alone. You're in this fascinating area. You're on an airline. Hey, there's a plane going by you. You know, not having so when you're talking to somebody about, again, say a baggage system or something like that, you can actually be sitting in front of that machine or whatever. You can walk through literally the process behind the scenes. How does security work? Oh, here are all the different steps. You can walk through it. That face-to-face, in-person touch point, literally seeing things with your eyes, was the curveball. And trying to overcome it. I mean, we use Teams a lot here. So trying to use video calls and all that, but as Kevin said, it's no substitution, but that's the closest thing we can come to right now. Yeah, so I think it's maybe not overcoming, but managing it through this, using video, using things like chat rather than email all the time. I find that's another way to kind of manage, because as I explained to people, I mean, email is great for some things, but not great for everything. So we utilize things like try to do a chat, try to do, you know, document sharing a little bit differently, those kind of things to sort of manage how this is. So those are kind of things we're doing to overcome that. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, cool stuff. Yeah, I've got an extra curveball, which is maybe a bit specific to WHO, is that, as you may imagine, the workload increased a lot because of COVID. I mean, this is fairly unprecedented. Since the Spanish flu, a global pandemic on this level. And the slide there gives you an idea of the kind of the areas within emergency work. It covers everything from surveillance and early warning through to coordination, response coordination, and recovery. And one nice anecdote is that one thing that surprised me, I was expecting the number of projects to explode. That was normal. We had to work smarter to deal with the extra workload. But one thing you don't read about much in the press is the number of organisations that approached WHO and partners with offers of help, either contributions or pro bono assistance or contributions in kind. And that's great, but that also took a lot of management to sort of bring those on board and what's the word? Focus and funnel and direct all that really good energy and attention into activities that were going to add value and yeah, further the mission. So that was quite humbling. That was a curveball, was being kind of humbled and really impressed by just how the wider community, we're talking private, public, academic, all different kinds of actors, really were there to stand up and appreciate that this is a global threat and it needs a global response.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that moves us along to our next question really well. Sorry. What is your advice for business analysts in a post-COVID world?
Okay, you enjoy to grab that one first.
Sure. Can you move to my slide? I forget what I had. Okay, there we go. That's a good one. So if it's anything, I think it would go back to, I think Kevin recommended the same things. Kevin used the word empathy. I would also echo that and focus on human behavior, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So I think that focus on the people that you're dealing with and involved with, helping them to kind of solve their problems. Also, I talked about the things of accelerated. There's a lot of technologies out there, things accelerating, which is great on one end, but focus on whether it's actually helping solve problems, because sometimes the technology, if it's just released and just kind of used or misused or not understood, could end up being a problem in and of itself. That's why I say, so when you're talking about different technologies, and Kevin, you'll probably come across this, let's just make sure it's helping, right? Which goes back to understanding what the problem is, which goes back to listening, understanding what the focus is, and adopting the right things in the right places to kind of help along. So I would say focus on the people you're involved with, like the people in terms of your business, in the areas you're dealing with. Focus on that, because in addition to everything else, like the problems, we are in a pandemic, right? This is a whole different way that people are, responding. This is a stressful thing across the board. So it's not normal times, whatever normal times was, it's not that. So, if people are still working or sometimes not working or fear for their jobs, then you take, help out there. Like that's a real everyday concern for everyone. So again, along with the empathy, we got to take that into account, right, as we go along. That's the one thing I would kind of pass on.
Yeah, I don't think I can improve on that answer. I mean, it's if it's taught us anything, it's the value of those human-to-human connections, isn't it? This is not a specific BA thing. It's that we need those, that we miss them. We miss contact with our colleagues, with family, with friends. And I hope we come out of this, really valuing that, and also valuing the vast number of people who we now realise our lives depend upon. The essential workers. And I'm not thinking just of public health. I'm thinking of delivery drivers, through to the people stuck in the shelves at the supermarket that keep this civilization turning. So I hope that's a real legacy. And maybe more specific for business analysis, I think we've all had to become really good or hone our skills at working remotely, as Dane said. And when we read that sort of 30% of communication is often non-verbal, that it's body language, it's facial expression, it's that atmosphere you feel when you walk into a room of stakeholders, that I think we've all had to, as Dane said, accelerate our abilities and our skills in the area of working without the benefit of physical proximity and that we need as human beings. So that's an important tool set to take forward. And I suppose building on that, I've also had the reflection that because we've been robbed part of that channel of communication with contact with people, I guess certainly in my job, I've had to become a bit more structured, I think, in how I communicate remotely, how I use the tools, how I go and get validation on documents that I've written, things of that nature, because you're having to work around that lack of physical contact. So yeah, I can see that, as Dane said, accelerating the way that we do our work and the skill set that we have to bring to bear on it.
That's so valuable. I mean, between the idea of communication and empathy and how much it's really evolved and changed with our move to remote work, it's completely evolved from what we used to have, but it's really about distilling what we used to do as BAs and understanding it in a different way. So I think you two, thank you so much for giving so much valuable information just about how adapting to business analysis during COVID-19 has really helped businesses move forward. I would like to move it back to our audience to share their ideas. This is the same question that we asked before. So I hope everybody's had a minute to put in their thoughts on that. You still have time with the link found in the chat, the slides, or the QR code on your phone to answer that open-ended question. I'm going to swap over to what results we have at the current moment. Oh, wow. Okay, so it looks like we've got quite a few already. This is rated already according to the people that we have here. Can everybody see my slide okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So I see the top idea is set expectations early in the process. What do you two think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes, totally agree with that. I mean, it was key before, it's even more key now.
And I see Teams is popping up there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Particularly expectations around how we're going to communicate. I saw some other responses have been that our own working day has become very flexible and porous. I don't know about you guys, but maybe working more of your lunch hour, you're working into the evening because it's in your home. You know, you work in your home and out together. So managing expectations early on about how you're going to conduct your work, communicate and interact is probably key to a healthy, successful and mentally sane project.
No, I think everybody really gave some valuable answers here. So to our audience, you have access to this currently and after the webinar as well. So feel free to continue to upvote and star ideas and put in some new ones if you think of any. I'm going to go ahead and swap back to our PowerPoint over here for Q&A. So I will go over to our questions box to look at some questions we have directly from the audience. So just to get started here, I have a question from Nerdine. Hi, Dane. How do you engage stakeholders like international passengers who throng your airport on a daily basis from all around the world when you need to develop solutions that would deliver value for them?
That is a pretty good question, and since March I haven't. That's a really good question because it's funny. I was working in some of the customer service engagement areas that do deal with passenger-facing things. So in the past life, prior to March, was able to meet with the team and actually go out. We'd have conversations in the terminal and actually get, it was actually pretty cool because as we're talking about things, passengers are coming up talking to us, so you can actually get the feel of like this is real life, this is what we're talking about. I haven't had any project in that end, but if I were to, again, I would have to fall back to just relying on the people that are in the terminal. Maybe add video if possible, because if they had their phone and we were talking around, I probably would try to add that in, although that might be slightly awkward, but that's the only thing I could think of. That might be a way to kind of work around that in the short term, because you're right, as we did, you brought me back to that time, we were actually just standing right literally the terminal and talk to people as they come in and go and get to see what it is we're talking about. That would be my only thing right now. It would have to be maybe video on their phone with the person if we were to do that. That's the only thing I could think of.
I think that's a really succinct answer to a very complicated question. Thank you so much, Dave. I'll send the next question to both of you from Manaka. What are the tools that you use during the whole requirement engineering process? Have you found more tools that would have been helpful during the pandemic?
Okay, this is when my colleagues see this, they're going to laugh because I'm basically known as the Teams guy, the Microsoft Teams guy around here. Microsoft Teams. It's just because that's where our organization has 365. We are using that a lot, and I've actually trying to use it all the way through, right from elicitation, right through to requirements manager, right through to approvals, right to working with vendors. If it one answer, Teams/Office 365, using all the different elements of it, part learning, because this is relatively new. These are new functionalities rolling out. But again, there's 3 projects I have right now where I'm actually, right from my initial meetings, I'm actually documenting them in the Teams meeting, documenting my notes in Teams meetings. I create a list of requirements right in the Teams, have the conversations chat. This is where I mentioned using chat back and forth. So after a meeting, we can still have that conversation about a requirement or something like that without having to have another, a meeting. So I would say yes. My colleagues are probably laughing right now as soon as they see this, but it would be Microsoft Teams. And again, that is not a paid advertisement, trust me. That's just what we use here. So if you use Google Suites or anything like that, there's something similar. But that's one of the biggest tools we use right now, just because it's, at the end of the day, it's a centralized workspace. Everything's in one, so it eliminates the conversation. Hey, can you send me the copy of that? Oh, I was away for 2 weeks. I missed this email thread on this. Like, it's all sort of self-contained, one spot. Everybody's looking at the same thing. But it also means it's also a learning curve on the business end as well, because we started pre-COVID, we started using Teams, and everybody sort of got a little bit introduced to it, but now it's just pretty much the official way we work. So it was a learning curve on the business end too. But that, if it's any one thing, I would say Teams/365, all the tools are available. Again, not a paid advertisement, so there you go.
Yeah, no, I'd certainly echo that. I find Teams has been good for us in terms of cutting down email as well, to save death by email of lots and lots of messages to and fro. So certainly backed by sort of SharePoint. We have some other sort of tools as well. IBM Blueworks for kind of process management, HP requirement management suite, but a lot of stuff based on the Office 365. In terms of new tools we've been looking into, stuff for animating workshops, so tools like Miro. There's another one as well, where you can have virtual sort of real-time collaborative whiteboards. So if you are doing a requirements capture brainstorming open session, you can have kind of virtual whiteboards to scribble around and save those out. But yeah, finding a way to kind of cut down on endless emails and to and fro was definitely a big thing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, whiteboards and Teams as well too. Thanks, Kevin. And mind
Planner
mapping
as well.
Planner as well. Mind mapping as well. You mentioned Miro. We use Mindomo, but whiteboarding as well. And whiteboarding in Teams is also it's coming to play as well. It's good.
Oh, that's a fantastic list of tools. I hope everybody was writing that down. I'll move on to our next question from Khalid. What are the steps to move from business analysis to business architecture?
That's
a small question.
I'll let you know. We're in that process right now. I think similar. There is a learning what business architecture is. To me, it's kind of taking analysis up a level, like to an enterprise level, still looking at the needs of the organization rather than like the need of a department or that you're solving a problem for. It's taking it up to the level of organization, looking at capabilities of the organization. The biggest thing would be getting the buy-in from the rest of the business. That's the thing. It's articulating in a way that you can show the value to people of it, like learning what a capability is. Because it's one thing to say you want to, I don't know, be the best, sales organization as an example. However, do you have the capability on hand to do that? Do you have the people, the training, the skills to do that? If you don't, what are you doing to close that gap? Like just having that conversation, because one thing to say, yes, we want to ramp up sales and we want to do this and we're going to hire a bunch of people and we're going to go, but then you got to look to the people you have on board are capable. You have the capability. Do you need to hire for it, close the gap, those sort of things. But then have articulating that to, again, executive level, and where does that fit in your organization? Is it an IT thing? Is it a business thing? Where is it housed? I guess because when it's sort of what we're finding out is it starts off in IT, but it's really not a quote unquote IT thing. It's not always about, although systems you are part of it, it's not all about just the technology. It's both, right? It's the business capabilities and technology capabilities.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that. I mean, we're lucky in that we have a global program of work at WHO that gets set every 2 years, and these are our goals, these are our mission statements, what we need to aim for. And I remember being in an Ebola meeting once where the head of the emergency response challenged everyone in the room to say, if you can't track back what you're doing, what you're working on today to one of these outcomes that we need to achieve to shut down Ebola, then question why you're doing it. I want to know why you're doing it, because it's a waste of time otherwise. So I guess, as Dane said, you test your requirements and your wish to realize something in that acid test, of whether it stays aligned with business objective, and continue testing through the life cycle of a project, because obviously those business objectives and outcome might change, and then you architect accordingly with the resources, with the capabilities, with the strategy that you're trying to realize.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fantastic answer to a very large question. I'll move us on to, I think it might be our last question from Martin. Do you find that agile methodologies have created more meaningful outcomes, or do they not have prominence in the highly risk-averse environments like the WHO or air travel?
I'm glad that came up, because I was actually thinking that was something I wanted to mention. I forgot about that. We are actually trying to implement some of that agile structure here. Actually just got off a call this morning on that. I think it's very valuable. Just even sort of thinking about things rather than always doing sort of a big bang approach, a lot of work up front, a lot of thinking, a lot of things, and then bam, get something that, may or may not hit the mark, and then you kind of go from there. So we are actually here recognize the value of maybe trying to think about things in that agile way, because again, not just the way the world works, but COVID, like really and truly on the other side of this, I don't think anybody can truly say this is exactly how things are going to be on the other side. So again, moving from that immediate need, do it a little bit agile, move it a little bit, see, how things are playing out. Maybe you need to adjust, but you don't adjust 6 months from now after you spent a lot of time and energy and build. You can adjust in days or weeks. So I think the methodologies of agile is very valuable, and we're starting to recognize it here, which is great. But it's a matter of, we have our own challenges. Here we don't have in-house development, right? So everything we do, it's with a vendor, and also you have to think about, it's going to be sort of a hybrid approach, but I think some of the principles are valuable, and it's being recognized here. We are trying to implement that, just because, you can't say for sure. You know a little bit ahead, you move, you adjust, you move, you adjust, which is at the end of the day what agile is about. So yeah, I think the principles of it are great, and we are trying to adopt them here.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that as well. You'd be surprised that humanitarian work is often not as risk averse as you might think. You're already in a very volatile, sort of risky situation. And WHO and other humanitarian actors, they usually have a no regrets policy. And the idea is that you shouldn't be afraid to take potentially life-saving humanitarian action because you're afraid of the consequences. So very often we have, we're not as risk averse as you might think. We'll try and act with the best information we have at the time. But that's something that lends itself quite well, translating through to the everyday project management to an agile approach. We're working in a highly volatile environment. Things can change very quickly. So if you're going to fail quickly and fail often, so you can readjust and re-steer your ship in the right way. And certainly it's got to be delivery of work which proves itself up front. You can't wait in the context of an emergency. As I said at the start of the speech, the sooner you could start shutting down chains of transmission, or the sooner you can intervene in an emerging health emergency, the more lives you're going to save, the more money you're going to save, the less negative consequences and human suffering you're going to experience. So you have to be agile by the very nature of the work, and I think it's something we're all doing more and more of every day.
I think that's a fantastic question to end on. Sorry, Dane, I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say a phrase we keep saying: "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." Right?
Absolutely.
Just move and do something, and then go from there. Sorry, go ahead. Good.
No, that was a fantastic way to end it, and thank you so much for your insightful answers, Kevin and Dane. It's great to see how business analysis is evolving with the pandemic. That does wrap up our time for Q&A and the time for the webinar today. So thank you for all of your thoughtful questions to our audience. And I would like to take a minute to say thank you to Kevin Crampton and Dane Benjamin for your time and expert insights into the state of business analysis during COVID-19 and truly showing us why business analysts wear capes.
Thank you. Well, thank you for helping setting this up. We appreciate all your work behind the scenes, you and Rosalind. I really appreciate that. This was great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. Thanks particularly the IIBA for the opportunity. It's been a fascinating discussion. Really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you to all of our attendees for being here as well. We'll send you a follow-up email, and please feel free to respond with any questions or comments you may have. We'd like to know what you think of our webinar, so thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all.